OpenSusE LEAP 16 is finally here. We are gonna go over the installation process and also just having a look around the desktop a little bit and go over the release notes to see what are some of the new features with OpenSusE LEAP 16. Just a little overview. OpenSusE was just released yesterday, so there's really not a lot that we can do as far as review. So we're just gonna go over some of the new things that you can expect when installing OpenSusE LEAP 16. So let's get started with the video. Right before we get started with the installation, if you notice anything different, the new installer Amaga has replaced Yast coming on from OpenSusE LEAP 16. If you all recall, previous versions of OpenSusE used the Yast installer, which is a very, very long process to get through that installer. And aside from that, it took a long time to install the distribution. With this new installer, the menus are a lot more simplified. They're better arranged. The installation process is very quick. With this new installer, you get through the steps in under 5 minutes and maybe 10 minutes more, and you're ready to go. So let's just go over how the installer looks and then proceed to install OpenSusE. Looking at the installer, as you can see, we have two options as far as the installation. You can go ahead and install LEAP 16, or you can install OpenSusE LEAP Micro 6.2. Right after choosing your choice of distro, we get a little overview over here, which tells us basically what to expect from the installer. The first thing you're gonna pick is your location, your storage, and your software. This is just a little overview of what's coming up within the installer and the steps you're gonna take. Right after the overview, you get a chance to select your host name. This option, with this option, you can name your computer if you want to have a specific name. So let's say you're managing 10, 20 different computers and they're all the same kind of computers, but they're on different locations. So you want to be able to know which computer is what, right? So you can use this option here. If you set a static host name, so you can name each laptop a different name. That way, you know, when you have to manage them over the network, you know which laptop you're managing. And that way you don't make any errors, doing changes to the wrong machine. And once you've decided to set a host name for your machine, the next thing is your location and your language. Here you can change, obviously, whatever language you're going to use. In my case, obviously, it's English. Also, same with the keyboard layout. You can change the layout if you're in a different country, or just if you prefer a different typing experience, you can change your keyboard layout. Our next option is selecting our network. So it depends how you're going to connect to the internet. You have the option to connect wired, and you also have the option to connect with Wi-Fi. In my case right now, I'm using a virtual machine to do the installation because, I'm not able to record it with the laptop that I'm using to install it. So the installation part, I'm doing it with VM. So basically my only option is my wired connection. But for you, you might have an option to use your Wi-Fi. And then in this step, you can either select to connect, or you can just continue to install without having a connection. Once you set up your the way you're going to connect to the internet, your next option is your storage selection. This is the part that a lot of users get confused, or is a little difficult for them, because normally this installation process asks you if you want to select a specific disk or a specific partition, or if you want to partition your disk a certain way. A lot of the users, this is where they might get stuck because the way it's presented might be a little difficult. But over here, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of, I guess I want to say, confusion. You have, the very first thing you have is, selecting your installation device. This should be pretty straightforward unless you have multiple drives within your computer. And the very next thing is the installation has an automatic option. So unless you're gonna specify your root partition, your home partition, the swap, you should just let the installer do everything for you, and it's gonna set up a couple of partitions that will allow your system to work. At the very far right, you have the option to encrypt your drive, your installation. If you decide to do it, you just click the edit button and you should be prompted for a password. You have a couple other options. You have the option to either select the way you want to partition your disk, or like I said, if you want to do it automatic, and you also have the option to select other disks if you have multiple disks within your computer. Once we've done with storage, the next option, you're going to be able to select your software. From here, you'll be able to select what desktop you want to install. You obviously have different options, just like the previous versions of OpenSusE. You have the GNOME desktop. I think that's basically their default desktop at the moment. You also have the option to select KDE. You also have the option of using XFCE for those of you that like that desktop. And then you got the option to select other programs to install. You can opt to install KVM, SC Linux support, software management. These are some of the other options that you have. As far as the desktop itself, you can select to install multimedia, like let's say Rhythmbox or GNOME Music, your Office suite, LibreOffice, and the such. And if you're going to be using the distribution as a server, you actually have the option to install a file server system, mail, and all the other stuff that makes a server work. All these options come from the Yast installer. This is basically, it's very similar to the way it looked when you install OpenSusE LEAP 15.6. And the very last thing of the installer, your authentication. And here you can create the user that you're going to name for either yourself or somebody else, whoever's going to use the computer. Obviously, the first user, once you select that, you can enter a username, their name, a username, and password. And you also have the option to set a password for a root user if you want to do that. Normally, this is not needed unless you're going to be using the system, and logging onto it through SSH. But for most users, you leave this option off, so that way your system is protected. When it comes to creating the first user, as I said, you have the option to, you will require to use a full name, username, and a password, and that's pretty much it. This is all the same as previous installations. And finally, that you've gone through the whole installer options, you obviously get to click at the very top corner of the Amaga installer, and you click install, and then you get asked for a confirmation with the warning, as always, you're going to be deleting or modifying your disk. So make sure that you have a backup of all your information, because as everything, technology is a little unpredictable. It tends to work most of the time, but the very few times that it doesn't work is when you decided not to make a backup of your system. Once you decide that you're going to continue, press continue, and the installer begins. Okay, so we're finally done with the installation. That didn't take as long as it would normally take with previous OpenSusE installations with the Yast installer. Usually your installation would range anywhere from 15, maybe 30 minutes max, whether you're using the offline installer or the network installer. But we're done. We're going to have a look at the new release notes and just go over some of the new features that OpenSusE LEAP 16 brings this time around. So the very first thing we're going to have a look at is, obviously, since we just went through the installation, we're going to have a look at the Amaga installer. Just talk about it for a few minutes. It replaces Yast completely. Amaga installer is supposed to be a web-based installer. It's got a very clean look, but it's also very simple to follow. Compared to the Yast installer, which, even though it's very straightforward for, I would say, experienced users, it will definitely be a little bit confusing and a little difficult for newcomers, right? As far as the new installer, we went through all the features. It's probably has like 5 tabs, and with the very most important information up front and center, with all the other more advanced features a little bit in the background, but you can still find them. I really like this installer. It definitely brings a new look to OpenSusE, even though the rest of the desktop is still pretty much the same. We can see that with this new installer, we're gonna be able to attract more users, definitely. Another amazing feature that the OpenSusE team has introduced to Leap 16 is parallel downloads while using Zipper. For years, for many years, I know OpenSusE users have dealt with how slow Zipper is when it comes to updates and upgrades and downloading new programs, because while other distributions already introduce parallel downloads for faster package management and downloads, Zipper has always had, one package at a time. So anytime you did an update, anytime you download a new program, Zipper would just take forever to go through the process. Now, I'm pretty sure this was introduced, I want to say with Tumbleweed, you've already had this option, but now we have parallel downloads with Leap 16. You notice an improvement as far as whenever you do a large update to the distribution. And just continuing looking at the release notes, one of the things we notice that the OpenSusE team has done away with is they're no longer going to support 32-bit. So going on forward, it's all 64-bit. It's a little sad to see that this is happening, but it's pretty much expected. As far as I know, very few distributions, and at least not the main popular ones, still support 32-bit. I know if you use Linux Mint, you can get 32-bit support, but I believe only through the Debian distribution. I know because I recently moved the Windows machine to Linux Mint, but because it was a little bit of an older computer, our only option was using Linux Mint Debian Edition, which still supports 32-bit. A lot of the distributions are moving on from supporting any type of 32-bit libraries just to full-on 64-bit. Let's go and continue reading on the release notes. Another huge thing with OpenSusE is that they have a new migration tool. This will allow you, as it says here, allows users to seamlessly upgrade from Leap 15 to Leap 16, and as well as to migrate to slow roll, tumbleweed, or even SLES. This is a really cool feature. This should also be, front and center along with the other new introductions of new programs, because with other distributions, every time you go from release to release, sometimes, not every distro, you have to do a clean install. There's a lot of distributions that still don't have a way for you to properly upgrade going from one release to the next. And having a migration tool pretty much guarantees almost, fully upgrading from one release to the next. And especially coming from, this long-term support release. OpenSusE LEAP 15, it's 7 years old. If anybody used it from the get-go all the way up to now, I'm sure they have a lot of information on their computer, and they wouldn't want to do a clean install right away, but they still want to be able to move on to Leap 16. The very next thing we see over here is length of time that the OpenSusE team is going to support Leap 16. Because Leap is basically an LTS distribution, we're expected to see updates and support all the way through 2031, with the latest version will be 16.6. And, at that point, the team should be preparing the next distribution. The next release should be expected around 2032. But in the meantime, we're going to enjoy free upgrades, all kinds of new features, and a very stable OpenSusE LEAP 16 release. And that's it for today, guys. Those who wish to make the move to LEAP 16 can do so by going to OpenSusE.org/desktop. At that time, you can select either Tumbleweed or Leap. For those who like the rolling type distributions, Tumbleweed is right up your alley. But for those of us who like, stable software, Leap is gonna be definitely the one you wanna go with. As always, we just got out of the beta release. This is, OpenSusE was just released yesterday, so expect some bugs. As a desktop, it's still very infant. The developers are getting all the information, from all the reports, all the bug reports, and working on making Leap 16 more robust and stable distribution. If you're concerned about what kind of bugs could affect you, you could refer to the Bugzilla page and just have a look around there. So in case you're trying to use Leap 16 and there might be a bug that could really prevent you from using it at the moment, anything that implements drivers or programs that are outside of OpenSusE control. And also, the OpenSusE team has created a page where you can leave feedback about Leap 16. If you go to the website survey.opensuse.org, if you want to leave some feedback, comments, or anything like that, this is a good place to start. I assume they're reading most of the information that they get from here in order to make the distribution really good for us. Well, friends, that's it for today. This is just a quick overview of some of the new features implemented with Leap 16. For all of those of you interested in upgrading, it's about time. We've had Leap 15 for as much as 7 years, so this should be definitely a very nice upgrade. I hope you guys enjoy this overview. If you have any comments for me, any questions that I may be able to answer, don't forget to leave them in the comments, and I'll see you into the next video.